Ford is going towards a boom. Already, Ford, for, contrary to everything you'll see on YouTube, Ford is absolutely going towards a successful year. The Ford brand is ranked first in the US market for 2023. But why would a whole lot of YouTubers think that Ford is doomed? Well, because they see F-150s sitting in yards for sale. And they don't, Ford's sending a lot of Sport 302. So you can have a whole bunch of white, gray, black, and one blue, one red Sport 302. And you go back 3 weeks later and you're like, they're the same trucks. They're not selling any. And you feel like you've done your diligent work and you've checked in. You're like, well, I went back, over 2 months. I went back 3 times, and over 2 months, it was always the same vehicles. They're clearly not selling any. And they feel that, like, hey, you know what? I'm not crazy. I'm going to make a video saying Ford can't sell any trucks. And look, my eyes don't deceive me. So they go along saying the sky is falling for Ford. But I remember when I was a little kid at the cottage, one of the first books I read was about a dumb chicken that had an acorn fall on its head. And that dumb chicken went around telling all the other animals that the sky was falling. Now, a bunch of animals believe dumb chicken. And, the smarter animals were like, well, that's a dumb chicken. And bigger, smarter animals eat chickens. Well, I'm a chicken eater, but I prefer steak. But hopefully in the future, we won't have chicken or steak taken away from us because for carbon reasons. Well, cows eat grass, and cows don't cause very much pollution at all.
You're getting out of your story.
They go to
with
the bathroom
chicken.
into the water system right beside the water. But in Canada, we have to fence off the water system so that they don't dump in the water. But I will get back on topic. But steak is good, folks, and beef isn't bad. Huge cities where you have, the future of the world, they want to have most everyone living in skyscrapers where you live at the top, you live in the top, you work in the middle, and you've got your stores at the bottom, and you're just stuck to your little 15-minute city. And, they're going to try to sell us on the idea that that's good. Cows are bad for the environment, and that's good for the environment, but cities are horrible for the environment. Cities are horrible for the environment. Cows are good. Continue eating steaks, people, and get ready for a fight. Let's fight for our right to eat steak. Now, Ford is on a boom, #1 in sales. But Consumer Reports is saying essentially don't buy a 2023 F-150. They're selling, sales are up on the F-150. Sales are great on the F-150. Why is Consumer Reports saying not to buy an F-150? Now, if you want a full fantastic 12-minute story on this, watch Pickup Truck and SUV Talk with Tim Esterdale. He knows what he's talking. He's unbiased, and he's a fantastic YouTuber. Also, I think Dave from All Terrain Nation is a fantastic YouTuber, and Tim Bartz. Those are my regular go-tos. But Tim Esterdale did a great story on this from Pickup Truck and SUV Talk, but essentially Consumer Reports is saying that, the suspension isn't quite as good as the competition, that Dodge is #1 on the interior, and their huge #1 recommendation is to buy a Dodge Ram, and they're also saying that the Dodge Ram has, is fantastic when it comes to reliability, so they recommend either the Dodge Ram or the Toyota. But we all know that the Toyota, Tim Esterdale said it himself, his Toyota gave him some problems. In their new EcoBoost, they have a 3.5 liter V6 twin turbo engine, just like Ford, and Ford calls it the EcoBoost. So unfortunately, somehow, I don't know how, it's not as if the engines seem the same. Sometimes call it the Toyota EcoBoost engine, but it's Ford's EcoBoost engine, but Toyota also has a V6 twin turbo, and they also offer it as a hybrid with an electric motor. But he had issues. Some people there's a bit of growing pains with that engine, but Consumer Reports is highly recommending it. So what's going on? Let's cover what's going on with what I think is must know, need to know, really need to know information. So a good example is JD Power Vehicle Dependability Study. Why is Lexus number one, followed by Genesis, Kia, Buick, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Toyota? Why is Toyota that low? And why is Hyundai just under Toyota? And how is Mini almost as reliable as a Toyota according to this list? And really, according to this list, Hyundai and Toyota are at 170, claims per 100 vehicles versus Toyota at 168. Odd. Okay. Industry average 186. And we go all the way down and we see Tesla's at 242. They're not last. They just didn't they didn't want to fit them in because it's all electric and these others. But anyways, 242. Oh boy, never buy a Tesla. That seems like a lot. No, I think we should consider buying Teslas. I think it's a very interesting product. But Land Rover is last. Lincoln is second last. Audi third last. Ford, then Mercedes, Jaguar, Chrysler, Volkswagen, Volvo, Subaru.
Yeah, like you said, why is Mini so much in the upper list?
Why is Porsche down there? Porsche is well engineered, and they're good vehicles to buy and own.
Yeah, I already told you what I think about it. It always depends on which brand give more money to GD Power.
Now, that's your opinion, and it's an opinion.
We never knew.
I don't agree with it. I don't have any, I would need data to believe that. Thank you, Ford Video Guy, for supporting my rants. And I tell Marie, I'm not going to have a rant this week. I'm going to be good. I'll be a good boy. And then I go on a rant. But how is Dodge? How is Dodge so high, and how is Cadillac so high? Well, here is the beginning of me breaking down, busting this BS. Now, I do have a slide. I took a picture. I even have it in paper form just in case I can't find it again. But I've got this right here.
There's a lot of stuff in this computer.
No, that's just for today's show. Yeah, that's just for today's show. So what's funny is in 2019. JD Power Association put Ford in fourth place. Ford was in fourth place. Okay, folks, what has happened since 2019? Has Ford just suddenly started making their engine blocks out of plastic? And we've gone to CVT transmissions to save money, and now we're horribly unreliable? Well, no, Ford still is very allergic to CVT. Anyone that says that the Ford Maverick and Escape and Corsair hybrids have CVT transmissions aren't fully explaining it. Not 99% of YouTube channels, of course not Ford Video Guy, but 99% of YouTube channels will say, oh, but they have a CVT transmission over on Ford on those hybrids. No, it's an eCVT, it's planetary gear set. I've said it all the time on the channel. I was beating the drum from the very beginning because people were like, oh, don't buy a Maverick because it's not going to be reliable. It's going to have a CVT, mind you, while they drive a Nissan Rogue. So, ha to them. Ford has not changed its powertrain, people. They haven't changed the transmissions. They haven't changed the motors. 2019 Ford is the same Ford as today. So does this mean that all this horrible reliability, second or third last place, Ford must be doomed? They must be just producing a horrible product, is what some people assume. It's what a lot of YouTubers have already jumped on to make a few extra dollars. I'm happy making $20 a video. Some people need to make $2,000 a video to be happy because they don't want to work. They don't want to go up to work and do the regular 9 to 5. Well, I have a regular, 9 to 8 and always answering emails. And, I have a business, selling vehicles and servicing people and taking care of people. But that means I work all hours. But Ford has not changed its powertrains, and it doesn't mean that all this unreliability is in the new models. It's not, the Bronco, we each had one, loved them, fantastic. I know where I can follow them I know where they are right now, and I know they're still in good condition. They haven't had to go in for any repairs, really. So all Ford's new products aren't problematic. My Lightning, isn't problematic. Your Maverick isn't problematic. But guess what? If I were one of the 100 people, this one problems per 100 people, if I was quizzed, I would destroy Ford's reputation because the sample that they take, let's say they take 1,000 people. If I'm one of the 1,000 people for the Lightning, I've brought my Lightning in already twice within the first year because they're only looking at what happens in the first year of ownership. And if it's not an electric vehicle, they're asking, other than for your oil change, have you had to go to the dealership or has anything else been done at the dealership while you're the owner? So if you went in for an oil change and they did 2 recalls, that's 2 problems. So where does that bring you on the list? Not 83. 83 means that out of 100 people, only 83 problems were reported. Meaning in those 100 people, some people reported 0 problems and some people reported 1 problem for an average of 83 points.
And like you said in other videos, company who has a lot of recalls, it didn't mean that it's bad. Sometimes it's just small recalls. It's not the big security one.
There's a Ford Bronco recall, honey, saying that the seatbelt is too far back. So they've recalled it. So a modification can be so that it's easier to reach your seatbelt.
Just to reach it. Okay.
Okay, we're not talking about a bad vehicle here, folks. We're not talking about don't buy a Ford Bronco. Because if you listen to these studies, you're essentially thinking, well, the result of your thinking is, well, I'm not going to buy a Ford Bronco because the seatbelt is hard to get to. Oh, no, wait, Ford did a recall and now the seatbelt is easier to get to. If you have a Lincoln, they did a recall at one point because the chime for either it was the door open chime or not putting in your, I think it was the door open chime. After you close it, it's supposed to, it was one of the chimes that's supposed to last a certain amount of time. And they're a fraction of a millisecond, not long enough. So we have to do a recall to add just a little bit of time on that chime so it falls within the National Highway Traffic Safety. Whatever their lettering should be, the severe police. They drive up the cost of vehicles because they oblige. And it can be good to a certain point, but they're always pushing for vehicles to be unbelievably safe. My rant tonight is causing me to start losing my voice.
Yeah, and at the same time, they shouldn't penalize a brand who has a lot of recalls because it just means that they do recalls and not let it go and just shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and Reggie has a good question here. He said, do you trust JD Power?
That is a good question. I trust them in the sense that how they collect their data is...
But they didn't analyze it
well. Data, not all data is built equally because it's all about what data you look at and how you look at the data. So here's the thing. Their data that they're looking at is how many problems per 100 people. So people going in with a problem with their touchscreen, it could be that their cell phone Bluetooth is off, but they go, hey, my vehicle isn't communicating with my phone, I've got a problem. That goes into that survey. So it's not that I don't trust JD Power, it's just I see them as a corporation out to make money, just like Consumer Reports, and it's easiest to not have to quantify the quality of the problem. So how much extra money would it take for them to be able to find out, well, did you just go in for a little touchscreen problem because your phone, either your Bluetooth on your phone is off or the connection between your phone and your vehicle has, gone bad and you just have to re-upload your phone? Well, it would cost a lot of money to differentiate between those unimportant problems or a very unimportant problem. You go in for a recall for a seatbelt on a Bronco that's hard to reach, or on a Lincoln, a chime that lasted 4.75 seconds instead of 5 seconds exactly, or an airbag that overinflates by, a tenth of a millimeter. And now there's a huge recall and YouTubers are jumping on the Mavericks are crap bandwagon. Don't ever buy a Maverick because I want to make 2 million views and get paid my $20,000 for a video. complete sellouts. And it's too bad because in the 70s, if you're a rock band and you sold out, your career was over. You'd get called names. And now if you call people names, at least in Canada, it's a criminal offense. If you hurt someone's feelings in Canada, it's a criminal offense. So, wow, can't wait to move. No, Canada, yeah, I want your political.
Can't wait to move.
Move, or I need to do something about it and get into politics and stop having the political system cater to the weak and force strong people to become mentally weaker and get into this victim. We live in a society that more and more is encouraging people to have an attitude and a psychology and philosophy of a victim. And societies need to help build strong people, not create, promote this victim attitude within society.
And need to be able to continue to eat steak.
That's right. That's right, because bread and sugar will make you depressed, weak, and soft. You are what you eat. You eat soft food, yeah, so eventually will seep into your mind and you end up having a softer psyche. So I think if I keep eating steak, I'll probably stay pretty intense even as I get more gray hairs. So yeah, so to answer, I don't agree with the criteria they're using. Their conclusions, when you're looking at just the final results, look very, very, very convincing. It is very easy to fall into this and say, oh boy, I'm going to shop a Lexus if I want luxury. Mind you, that's actually a good idea. Lexus is a very reliable luxury brand. But Buick for incredible reliability? I'm not sure. Cadillac for incredible reliability? No, the cost of ownership is really high. Very close to Audi prices, which, BMW of, Audi, Mercedes, BMW. I think cost of ownership, I think this type of survey almost needs to be, it's self-serving. It's only serving the people that work there, that get money for, this type of publicity, for putting this type of stuff out, because there's no differentiation between, Dodge Ram's differential and transmission, which are pretty so-so, but, Dodge is pretty high. Ram is pretty. Let's see where Ram is according to them. Yeah, Ram's right in the middle.
Just under the average.
Well, Ram traditionally their diffs aren't the best and their transmissions aren't the best, and this type of survey can encourage the company to be like, hey, we've got a pretty decent rating. Let's not go and switch make our transmission and differential more bulletproof, because right now I can safely say a 1500 transmission and differential are absolutely not bulletproof. Some people have really bad luck with them. I know someone that went through three total replacements at the garage between one transmission. I think it was two differentials. So I think what's really important is average cost of ownership. I think what would be interesting is if ever there was a law passed that said that manufacturers have to report repairs, either covered by warranty or not covered by warranty, and then covered by warranty, that there'd be some sort of clause that if companies want to comment on this and make, these graphs, that if it's not covered on warranty, it's, full value. And if it's covered by warranty, well, as the average, it's only like a quarter of its value. And then we could rank car companies by their cost of ownership. So if the cost of ownership, let's say for, 7 years on a BMW, let's throw out a number, is $14,000. And then you see Cadillac at $10,000. And then if you see Ford at $5,500, well, then you're like, that is actually good buying knowledge, buying data that will save you thousands. Because, you no longer look at this list and go, oh, okay, well, a BMW versus, Ford is fourth at the bottom. This makes you think. The normal, natural human conclusion is that owning a BMW is going to be far less costly than owning a Ford. And that's just the biggest load of BS that I've covered in the last 2 years. Since I've had this show, that is the biggest load of BS. That this list is going to make you think that BMW ownership is far less costly than Ford ownership. BMW ownership is more costly than Ford ownership by about double. It's a little more costly than Audi ownership. And Lincoln ownership is actually, in the luxury brands, the cost of owning a Lincoln is very low for a luxury brand. It's up there with, Lexus and Lincoln, the two L's, great luxury brands if you're looking for low cost of ownership. And this list just isn't doing it for me. It upset me quite a bit when I came across this, and I said, you know what, this is a way that I can help our car community here of auto enthusiasts save thousands of dollars. And it doesn't mean that the vehicles at the top of this list are going to cost you a lot. It just means that this list is what I would say, we're looking at actual data, but it's not good data. There's a company, and I'd have to look it up, Vincentric, I believe. Vincentric looks at the cost of ownerships, and I wish that would get pushed because that is actually helpful data.
Bigger analyze that they did, maybe. Yeah.
They're looking at, what the cost of owning that brand is. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I've looked, but I know carrepairbill.com looks at cost of ownership by model. And then they'll actually sometimes have a list and here's a list of things that you might check. And even though the cost of ownership might only be $900 a year, and you're like, oh, that doesn't seem bad. But then you go down and you're like, oh, okay. Let's say Mercedes 500 SL might have a suspension repair, and it's, let's say $2,000 shock for the job. And you're like, okay, well, $8,000, I'm at this many miles. And then it helps you kind of further your research to then find out, well, I'm shopping a used Mercedes 500 SL. It's at 150,000 kilometers. And the problem for the suspension normally occurs between 120 and 150,000 kilometers. Well, then, you're going to ask that person, do you have the bills to show that you've changed the suspension? And if they say no, well, you automatically tack, let's say, $8,000 onto the price of that vehicle. And you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to buy this vehicle. So that's the type of data that needs to be shared and promoted. Mm-hmm. So Consumer Reports, though, they've put the Dodge Ram in first place, whereas in other years it was much lower. But then, where are all the new mechanics on the Ram? So what they're looking at, they're balancing out quality, the feeling in the ride, handling, comfort of the seats, if the vehicle interior is luxurious or not. So they're really trying to recommend or not recommend vehicles based on all the facets of the vehicle, like the whole walk around. Whereas I would think that when you're buying a vehicle, you subjectively, because we're all, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's what we call as being subjective. I think the best thing is go out and shop your vehicle, draw the vehicles that interest you, test drive them, and then look at cost of ownership. Those are all good criteria for buying a vehicle. And I can tell you, cost of ownership on our Fords have always been good, even when I'm playing around with 30-year-old Fords. Fords from 1994, 1995. I generally would own them for a year and a half, sometimes two, switch one little electronic part for $95, another little electronic part for the biggest part I ever spent was $200.